Welcome to the Nightly Rant
with
your hosts, Mike
and Toria.
This is the show where we examine society from a sarcastic point of view.
If you like insane conversations, this is definitely the show for you.
Let's get into today's topic. YPN people, I don't know about you, but I love helping out a friend. That's why I want to shout out my friend Brian Little and his podcast, Your Favorite Blockhead. This is the only show that manages to weave together peanuts and MMA into one heck of an amazing podcast. You can find Your Favorite Blockhead wherever your favorite podcasts reside and at yourfavoriteblockhead.com. Do me a huge favor and listen to Brian's show. You'll be entertained and you'll help out a friend. Now, as I said, let's get into today's topic. So it looks like the counties are going to open up again.
At least a little bit. Slightly less fascism.
But all of the news that's come out this week is super confusing.
Oh, you mean like the CDC completely flip-flopping on whether or not this can be transmitted on surfaces or not?
Well, okay. One of the reasons why they closed gyms and restaurants was because of the surface transmission. The tables at restaurants, the menus at restaurants, and the equipment at gyms.
Uh-huh.
But now they're saying that it doesn't get transmitted on surfaces like that. Whereas before, they said it did.
It's very confusing.
So that means these places have been forced to stay closed because of bad information. And this is why I've said all along that when you're dealing with something that they've never seen before, why were they so ready to overreact? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't you have a measured response, like a carefully measured response?
I would think that strong suggestions of precautions while they did more research probably would have accomplished the same thing with less rage. Because I think businesses that were scared or didn't want to be open would have closed. And businesses who wanted to stay open would have stayed open. And people who wanted to stay home would have stayed home. And people who didn't want to stay home would not have stayed home. Exactly what's happening now. With less fines and less rage.
Yeah, and it's intriguing to me because, like, also I find out that there's a disinfectant out there that literally all you do is spray it onto surfaces and let it dry, and it takes care of business. You don't need to wipe it, spread it around or anything like that. Just spray it on and let it go. And so a lot of gyms that are open are using this spray, and they're just leaving bottles of it around, and they're telling people after you use the equipment, just spray it and leave it. I mean, that can't get any simpler.
Most gyms ask you to spray your equipment and wipe it down anyway.
Exactly. It's gym etiquette. Nobody at a gym that actually goes to the gym and is serious about the gym is going to have a problem with that. Nobody.
Makes sense.
But I mean, we live in such a weird time because I never thought Americans would just allow their rights to be taken away like that. I never thought that.
Bend over and tell the government to take their rights away? Yeah.
I mean, it's akin to all the people who say, oh, if they come for my guns, there's going to be a war. Well, why wasn't there a war over this? Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, to be fair, if they come for my guns, people are the same people who are mad about this. At least they're still mad.
Well, but then as far as being in a crazy time, like you got presidential election coming up, and you got Joe Biden goes on a videoed interview and says to the black guy who's interviewing him, who said, well, I'm having a hard time deciding between voting for Trump or voting for you. Biden's answer was, if you can't decide whether to vote for me or Trump, you're not black.
It's very confusing. Like,
It's
why
racist.
would you even say that?
It's racist because the inference is if you're black, you should be voting for Biden.
Is it because he was the vice president to a black president? Is that what's being implied here?
It's what's being implied is that black people are supposed to be Democrats.
Oh.
And
I see.
they're essentially, he's also calling Trump a racist by saying, well, if you're a black person, you're not going to vote for Trump because he's a racist. But now it's causing a lot of stir, and black people are annoyed by it on social media. There's a lot of black people reposting that video talking about how racist Joe Biden is.
Our friend Wildstar posted it earlier. And so what I saw in my Facebook feed was that from him. And so I watched it and I was all alarmed. And then I scroll down a little bit farther and I see that thing where it says Joe Biden has the coronavirus. I can't.
But, all right. I feel like these supposed guidelines for reopening are just as blurry and
yeah, exactly,
undecided as the guidelines for closing were.
Uh-huh.
And
I mean, it says part of the guidelines for reopening, all people must wear a cloth face covering in public places, comma, when they're shopping, comma, or while they're at work. That's what it says in the article that I looked at. Well, why do you have to wear it when you're alone in the park? Nowhere near anybody else. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, it actually would. I read the article in the Orange County Register and it said where you're out in public and you can't be more than 6 feet away from people who are not in the same family.
That was the next sentence. So does that mean if the grocery store is super empty, you don't actually have to wear it in the grocery store? Also, I find it very interesting that the Canadian equivalent of the CDC came out like 2 days ago and said that the mask wearing is causing serious issues for people with breathing problems, people with mental illnesses, people with anxiety and autism specifically. And now when the mask guidelines come out in Orange County, they're saying that people with asthma, medical problems, or mental health issues that cause made worse by wearing the mask are exempt.
But where's the exemption coming from? That's the thing. Again, the guidelines don't exist for the exemption. They just say, if this is the case, then there's an exemption. I mean, can't I just say I have anxiety?
I would think so.
And done. So there's going to be a lot of people with anxiety.
Right.
So that they don't have to wear those stupid masks.
Well, they do make it incredibly hard for you to breathe. Maybe you do have anxiety from having your mouth covered.
But you know, these people that are like, gotta wear a mask no matter what, are not consistent with their stance on any issue. Because on the one hand, we should have Medicare for all. It's a right. It's a human right. Everyone should have Medicare. And that way they can get medical attention. And nobody should be left to die. And nobody should be exposed to the virus. Well, I want to ask all of you who say that, how many of you have considered in the last 10 years, how many people have died after you exposed them to the common flu? Have you bothered to give that any thought? I haven't.
Nobody can answer
the question. And I don't think you have either.
Because
I don't think anyone has.
Crap loads of people are asymptomatic common flu carriers as well.
And that's the point. This has gotten to the point of being ridiculous. It's like, okay, let's just kind of lump a whole bunch of things in here. And I'm sorry, but this is going to be controversial. And if you don't like me and you want to unfollow us and stop listening to our show because I said it, that's okay with me. Then you're not my people and you shouldn't be listening to me. But like the LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ people, I mean, like, and I'm sorry, why do we need to keep adding letters and 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 making it more complicated to even understand what the heck it is? You know what? You could say LGBT. That's fine. Lesbians, gays, bis, transsexuals. Is there a reason why we need to add queer? Isn't a gay person also considered queer? I mean, I don't understand any of that, but here's where I'm getting at with it. It's become like this progressive issue. First it was, and I get how this works, and I actually agree with this part, but first it was, gay people have rights too. And they do. Gay people have rights too. Gay people should not be treated any differently than straight people. Ever. anywhere for any reason. They should be able to get the same jobs, play the same sports, go to the same places, do the same activities as everybody else. They're human beings just like the rest of us. But that's where it started. And then it was, well, now we have to make sure that transgender people can use whatever bathroom they want to use. Remember that big outrageous argument a couple years back?
The one that I decided I didn't care about, and then I started posting hilarious pictures of pre-existing transgender bathrooms.
Well, yeah, and then
gender neutral bathrooms.
And then it became this massive thing that businesses have to have gender neutral bathrooms.
Sure.
Okay, well these things are this is what keeps happening to our society. Now we're turning into, oh no, we can't allow viruses to spread from person to person. We can't allow that. That's wrong. We need to protect people from viruses spreading. Why is it anyone else's job to protect me from getting sick?
It's not. Well, it might be my job to sometimes protect you.
But if I want to go, if I want to go to a bar that's crowded with 1,000 people and risk getting coronavirus, isn't that my prerogative to do that?
Yeah.
And risk getting coronavirus, isn't that my prerogative to do that? I mean, I understand. Even this is kind of backwards, if you ask me, that they're worrying that I'm going to get the virus and then I'm going to continue to go out and spread it. And they're making that a criminal offense. Like there's been people who have said they've tested positive for it and they've purposely gone out and done this, that, or the other thing. Now, I get the intent there matters, that they knew and they went out purposely. But do they do that to people with the flu who still go to work and infect me with the flu?
Nope.
And why not? Why is it any different?
As far as I know, the only other thing that you can spread to people that is got criminal shit attached to it is HIV. So does that mean coronavirus is HIV?
Did you know that in California,
I know
it's not illegal anymore?
That's a whole other kettle of annoyance. We don't want to talk about that.
Here's the thing, okay? I feel like we have become too much of a politically correct society where every single thing people have to be put into a bubble.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to go out in public because, God forbid, we go out in public and like exchange germs. I mean, let's face it. Let me ask you a question. Have you seen any studies anywhere that says the human species is on the brink of extinction?
All the scientists say we're on the brink of extinction.
Really?
That we're going to blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons.
You know I'm going to ask you to prove that point, right? Blowing yourself up with nuclear weapons is not extinction. Extinction is you slowly can no longer reproduce and you're getting killed off faster than you reproduce.
I get it.
Are we in a position where we're going to go extinct? I don't think
Not
so.
if you use that definition, but
So
the usual
then why-
definition people use is the doomsday calculator. But
That's not extinction to me. Extinction is like, you're as a species, you're no longer going to exist because you can't procreate as fast as you're dying off.
Oh, well.
Like dinosaurs are extinct because they are now gone.
Your definition of distinction is different. I see.
Okay, so why are we trying to protect ourselves so much from the spread of communicable diseases when, I could understand if we were on the brink of extinction.
I have to tell you something now. Have to. I read this article. And so your definition of extinction is less births than deaths. So slowly dwindling population. Okay. So
Right.
there's the United States is already on the verge of a baby bust where people just aren't having children anymore.
Right.
And they're saying that this pandemic and this economic crisis is going to shove the United States straight into a baby bust. Like, no babies.
Okay, and the point?
Wait, doing the quarantining and causing the giant economic crisis is shoving the world into what you just said we're trying to prevent.
Well, yeah, but the bigger problem for me in all of this is that we're not on the verge of extinction, and we've never worried about this before. And my point is, how long have human beings been around?
Long enough.
And we've just allowed these things to spread. And we've developed vaccines to stop the really bad things from causing mass deaths. But nobody has ever said, oh, let's lock people down because there's a measles outbreak.
There are people who say that this is the Earth's way of cleansing itself and limiting how many people are on it.
Makes sense.
I mean, science has been saying for years that we've already surpassed the Earth's limit of population because we're living for so much longer.
And I asked this question because I was told by an idiot that I am a danger to humankind because I think people should have a right to go out and about without masks. So why aren't people a danger to humankind who go out and about without masks when they have the flu or the common cold or any other respiratory infection? It doesn't make any sense. And that's the part that irritates me, is that we're willingly giving up rights because these whack jobs are in control, and these whack jobs are putting restrictions on us in such a way that we can't do anything about it.
Well, do you notice that it was a 2-week lockdown, and then they're extending it for another 2 weeks, and now it's been 2.5 months?
Yeah, it keeps getting extended for just 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks. And here's the thing, okay? I say this all the time, but I apparently have to keep saying it in like every episode where we talk about anything political or controversial. Just because you feel one way and I feel the other way, and you're on the left side of things, that doesn't put me on the right side of things. I'm not a rightist. I'm not a far right-wing wacko. I'm not any of that stuff. I couldn't be any closer to the center than I already am. And it's frustrating to me that people are that dumb that they have to apply labels like that to everybody. And there's no reason for the labels other than to just disparage you and pick on you.
You mean like the dude who called me a left-wing hack? Because I said both Trump and Biden are too big of idiots to be the leaders of this country?
And I don't understand why they get to that leap. Like, it just...
Why does that put me on the left? I didn't say that I wanted Bernie.
Well, because you're in a situation in this society where you're with me or you're against me. That's how people look at it. And so if you're not with them, then you can't be one of them.
My response to being called a left-wing hack, though, I have to tell you, all the people have thought it was funny. I will read it to you if I can find it.
Generally, if you're going to bring that up, you should be prepared to read it.
The thread is being strange and everything's in the wrong order. And I said, you're definitely incorrect in everything that you've said. Perhaps someone will figure out where someone stands before resorting to being a fucking moron and telling them what they believe, smiley face. It will make you look a lot less stupid in the future.
Well, that's one of the new personality types in society, is the people who tell other people what they themselves believe.
Jackass is now a personality type?
I mean, I can never come up with a good example on the spot because these people that do it all the time are so asinine. But like, okay, example. Did you vote on Measure A? Well, I vote on things that are on my ballot. Oh, you committed voter fraud. Really? I did? Because I said I vote for things on the ballot and I purposely was being cagey and not answering your question.
You were being vague. Vague is not voter fraud, dumb shit.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, just why do we jump to those conclusions? Or like I said, you know, I did that interview and I scratched my nose and someone asked me, was that some kind of signal? What? Why does it have to be some giant overtone to everything? And that's what this whole pandemic has created. You know, oh my God, you know what's going to happen next, right? People are going to be at work and they're going to get shamed because they're going to have a runny nose because they have the common cold and they came to work.
Or they're going to be allergic to the fucking plant pollen that's running rampant right now.
And they're going to be at work and people are going to think they're sick and they're going to get shamed because of
I've come to the conclusion it's the jacaranda trees that I'm allergic to, by the way.
But that's where it goes with this. And that's why I'm so loud about it. It makes me angry.
In case anyone couldn't tell.
Makes me angry that people get mistreated in that way. There's no reason to treat another human being that way just because they have the sniffles.
I think my friend that called me a left-wing hack could listen to our podcasts beginning to end first episode to now
And
and
they'd
still
call you
not
a
find
and they'd
where I
still-
land on the political spectrum.
And they'd still call you a left-wing hack.
Right.
But that's because, in all fairness, that person loves Trump.
Oh, yeah.
So therefore, you must hate him. And that's, we've talked about this so many times, but people, you have to get out of this mindset that just because I don't agree with you 100%, that I must disagree with you 100%, because that's just not true. Like there's so many topics where you and I are so close, but yet
So
maybe
far.
I take it a step further than you do, or you take it a step further than I do. And like we've talked about, common ground. That's what you need to look for with people, is common ground. If we're going to get along as a race, and all human race get along with one another, we have to have common ground. Example for us, when we were dating and you lived in another country, how many arguments in the beginning did we have about, no, that's illegal. No, it's legal here. No, it's illegal. And then I would say to you, honey, I just did it 5 minutes ago. It's not illegal. And you'd say, well, it's illegal here. Well, after a few of those, we suddenly realized maybe we should check and see what the differences are and find the common ground.
My favorite was the liquor stores. When the one time, I think it was the first one too, you insisted that you could buy vodka next to your potatoes. And it was funny that you could buy them together. But I was like, no, that's not the truth. There's a wall between those things at grocery stores here.
And now it's not true that you can
Right.
buy it here. I mean, and that's the thing. Common ground is really important to find, because if like when you're trying to decide, when you're trying to decide something and there's like 3 angles to it, I always think of that chart where they have the circles and there's an intersection of the circle.
The Venn diagram.
That's where you want to be, is in the intersection.
Mm-hmm.
That's the common ground.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you bring in the most people to your side of the argument. And common ground is not something most people seek. They all seek high ground or low ground. They don't seek common ground. And like, I'm sorry, you can sit there and yell at me all you want and be as loud as you want and tell me that I'm a danger to humankind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all it does is make you look like a freaking moron. It makes you look like a psychopath. It makes you look like one of those conspiracy theorists who, and I'm not talking about people who have legit conspiracy theories. I'm talking about the people who are like, well, a rabbit ran across the screen, and when rabbits run across the screen, that means the person's telling a lie. Like, where do you get this crap from? Your grandpa told you this or something, and so now you believe it? Like, that is stupid.
Oh, shit.
Common ground, people. You have to find the common ground. If you find the common ground, all of a sudden, it's like, the only way I can describe the experience is when a storm is over and the clouds break and the blue sky and the sun shines through. Suddenly you're like, oh, all is good in the world. The rainstorm is over and now the sun is coming out and everything can go back to normal.
See, out of the 2 people in this conversation, only one of them likes it when the sun comes out after the rainstorm.
So is that why in movies, that's one of the literary techniques, is to use cloud breaks and sunshine to show a change and more towards a happy side? Of course, it's
You
why.
didn't listen to what I said.
Yes, I did.
Out of the 2 people in this room, only one of them likes it when the sun comes out.
But the point is that
I get your point.
as far as common ground goes, it's more likely that you're going to find more people that see it that way.
Fine.
And you have to consider that when you're having a conversation with somebody. And I think it actually goes a step further. It goes to what we've talked about before with relationship issues. You have to assume good intentions on the part of the other person. And when you approach it that way, you tend to ask questions rather than pass judgment. And I'll admit, I was guilty of passing judgment a few years back. Now I'm more the ask questions guy. And the funny thing is, then the person I work with gets upset at me because I ask questions. But I ask questions to understand where you're coming from, to find the common ground so that we can continue to be friends and move on. And as we've discussed, if an issue is 10 feet wide and I only believe the first 8 feet and you believe the first 9 feet, well, the first 8 feet is common ground.
Yep.
And we're gonna agree on that. And it's that way with like political spectrum. Everybody talks about how libertarians are so weird and blah 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 blah. But the point is, even libertarians, if they're really intellectually honest, some of them believe all drugs should be legal. Some of them believe that 5-year-old children should be able to drive a car if they want to. Others are more pragmatic, and they realize the issues that can cause in society, where we talked about once about the shooting up centers, and there are libertarians who are against that, and there are libertarians who are for that. And that's okay to have both sides of that. But the common ground is they believe adults should be able to use drugs because it's their body, and they should have control over what they do with their body. And that's why I find it contradictory that they don't want to have shooting centers, because, if I'm allowed to use drugs, why shouldn't I also be allowed to make the choice to use drugs in a place where it's safe?
The other one that always kills me, and I don't understand why there's such a large disconnect with libertarians, is abortion. Some of them are very anti, and some of them are very pro-choice.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But hey, you know what? We got to wrap this up because you got crazy protests going on every single day.
There was one today.
There's a group now that's been doing church in a park in San Clemente, and they're saying the government can't stop them. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. And, I actually don't understand why churches weren't allowed to be open. They should have just simply made some guidelines for them. But see, I'm beginning to feel that that's the shortcoming of government overall, is that there's no follow through. So like if we were to have a policy for our employees that we wanted it to go a certain way, we would create the policy, and we would say, okay, well, what happens in this scenario? Well, this is what happens. Well, what happens in this scenario? This is what happens. Well, this could happen as well. Okay, well, then we need to have this happen. And we would cover all of the bases before we roll the policy out. And if we forgot something, we'd fill the gap at the appropriate time. And I don't feel like the government has done that. I feel like at the point when they decided that it doesn't get transmitted by surface level, then why can't the restaurant open?
It's no coincidence that came out from the CDC, and less than a week. I don't know when the CDC thing was.
It's only been 4 days.
That's why I said less than a week. Later, things are opening.
No, there's no coincidence there. And
none.
And it should have never been closed in the first place. And it's going to come out in the end. You guys watch. All of you naysayers who listen to this and call me a right-wing wacko. Well, if I'm a right-wing wacko, then I'd rather be a right-wing wacko because I'm correct. This is not because I'm a genius. This is just using common sense. I do not agree with, one of the things you always learn in management is attack the problem, not the person. And I feel like they didn't attack the problem.
Yeah, they attacked the people.
And with that, I have nothing left to say about this topic.
Well, I just want to say one more thing that I wanted to say like 3 minutes ago, but you were on a roll. Do you remember the night we finished moving and then we went to Chili's?
Yes.
And it was like the last day you were allowed to go to sit-down restaurants in Orange County?
Yes.
And they were seating every second table to keep people safe. Why was that not enough? Why disinfect the tables, seat them at every second table?
Further, remember they had a manager sitting at a table disinfecting the menus.
Yeah, exactly. They were taking a shitload of precautions because they didn't want to go here. So why did the rest of us have to go here?
I'm sorry. I do have one other thing to say. Free market system society. When businesses are good citizens and they follow the rules and they show that they care about their customer and that they've got their customer's best interest at heart, and they're trying to please all of the customers by coming up with a common ground that everyone's comfortable with, that people and them being comfortable with customers saying, no, you're not doing enough, I'm not going to go there. As a business, you decide what level you have to rise to. Okay? Some businesses have sensor machines at the front of their stores with sensor tags on everything because they don't want to have even one thing stolen. Other businesses understand that theft can be part of business as a retailer, and you just have to have systems in place to make it stop. And spending money on a sensor system isn't something they want to do. So they rise to the level of where they feel the most comfortable. In this case, in that incident, Chili's wanted to stay open and they wanted to keep their customers safe, so they were doing that. But if you and I didn't feel safe with that, we don't have to go to Chili's. We could never go to Chili's then if that was the case. And other people who are comfortable with it could go there every day if they want to. The point being, once again, free market rules. If enough people felt that Chili's wasn't doing enough, then Chili's would have two choices: to give us the middle finger and say, screw you, I'm not changing, and go out of business eventually, or cave to the pressure of society and change. But that's how things should be. I mean, we've talked about it every time. If you vote and you make sure that when you vote, you think about what's best for you and your family, then you're going to, and if everyone did that, the person that got elected is going to be representative of the best interests of society as a whole. It's just going to happen. And that's the same thing that happens with free market. You have to let the market decide which businesses stay open and which businesses close. And you know, I feel like that would have been the natural progression for this lockdown situation. Instead of shutting everything down, warn people of the dangers. You know, when you go to the barber, make sure that the barber's disinfecting the comb. I mean, I'm sorry, they're already supposed to be doing it. This is the thing. It reminds me of the conversation we had with Abe about Amazon. Oh, well, they need to do this. Well, don't they already have laws doing that? Yeah, but we need new laws. Why? We already have those laws. So why do we have to create laws to cover for the laws that we already have that we're not enforcing? Well, if you're supposed to disinfect the table after, isn't that what's supposed to happen with a restaurant? Isn't a restaurant supposed to be cleaning off the table and making sure that when that little kid was sitting there spitting all over it, that they cleaned that up, right? I mean, that's what they're supposed to do, right?
I would think so, yes.
And if they're not doing it, and enough people see that, wouldn't that mean the pool of people who go there gets smaller and they slowly don't make money? So my point being, if that haircut guy over there doesn't make me feel like he's keeping me safe, I'm not going to go to him. I'll go to somebody else. And if enough people do that, that guy will have to shut the doors or change. But only pressure from society can affect that. Only pressure from society can affect that. You cannot make that happen by shutting people down and giving government mandates. I mean, look at the talk we had about Costco. People go into that. I mean, that's the most brilliant thing they've done there, is in that back corner where they have tons of space, they directed the traffic in a circle so that no one would pass one another. And adult human beings couldn't figure out the rules and follow them. Well, there should be someone there that says, look, you go with the arrow or you get out of here. But see, that's where we always fall down in society. We set rules and then we don't enforce the rules. That's why kids run rampant, because parents tell them, oh, you have to be home by 10 o'clock. And then when they're not home by 10 o'clock, they get a slap on the wrist at most. Mine knew. You don't call me, you don't come home by curfew, I take your car keys away. Now what are you going to do? You're going to comply. I mean, it's that simple. And I don't understand why we needed to get all totalitarian and shut everything down when society would have handled it itself. And you know what? Unfortunately, where we live, everything would have been closed. It would have, no matter what. But maybe in Utah, maybe they'd be a little more relaxed. Or Nevada.
Everything would not have been closed in Orange County. Everything in LA would have been closed.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. It's the society. But that's okay. That's how it should be. I mean, I believe we should set our own rules about a lot of things in the areas where we live. But anyway, your point is valid. Your point is very valid. We should have allowed society to handle this, because we would have handled it how we felt best. And you know what? What would have happened? They would have said, oh, well, in Orange County, the cases are really high. And that's because they're so lax. And then as a society, we could think about that and say, they're right. we need to be more strict. Let's require more. But no, we didn't do that. We went from 0 to 100. Like we just went ape shit about restrictions. And that's what we do in California. Regulation after regulation after
Welcome
regulation
to California.
after regulation. I'm surprised. I totally agree. I don't remember who said this to me. I think it was Kenny. We're all surprised that they didn't ration toilet paper and tell you can only use 2 squares at a time.
Oh, I know.
I mean, I'm shocked by that. That is really, that's how far they normally go. So I really hope that we don't have to talk about pandemics and viruses for much longer. But I have a feeling that society as we know it has made that pivot. And these things are here for the long haul.
I'm moving to a state that's less.
We have to.
I don't even have a word that I can say on this podcast to describe it.
We have to.
On that lovely, happy, curse word filled note, good night, everyone.
Hasta la bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Nightly Rant.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Google Play.
If you didn't enjoy the show, please just ignore that previous request for a rating.
This has been a Yogi's Podcast Network production.